This is Algebra 1, Lesson 2A about angles. And in order to talk about angles, we're going to need to talk about lines first. So we have some vocabulary words for this lesson, and I've listed those out here. And we'll just start doing some drawings and talk about these terms. So if we're going to talk about the word intersect, we're going to need to talk about some lines again. So if you have this line, and like we said in the last lesson, we put arrows on it to show that it keeps going in both directions. Those are lines, not segments. They intersect right here. So that is your intersection. So when you talk about lines intersecting, it just means they cross. Okay, so these two blue lines are intersecting lines. And the point of intersection is there at that little blue spot. Now, usually what they will do is they will darken that, make like a dot there, and maybe even label it. So you would say the point of intersection is at point A. So that's our point of intersection. Now, we can also talk about parallel lines, and our notebook paper has tons of parallel lines here. Let's darken this line over and darken this line over, and we can put some arrows on the ends to show they keep going in both directions. And you see that they are parallel to each other. They do not cross. And not only do they not cross where in this portion that we're looking at, if you extend the lines, both of them in both directions, they're never going to cross. This distance between them is the same all the way throughout. So if you were to extend them, they would not cross. So they're called parallel lines. I always think it's interesting that parallel has some parallel lines in it. Even this one over here. It's got 3 line segments that are parallel, and that can help you remember what the word parallel means. Perpendicular lines, or when you have a line, which that one's not the greatest. Let's try this. That's a little closer. Okay, if you have intersecting lines and they intersect at a 90-degree angle, they make the corner of a square. Okay, now when I draw that little part of a square there, I'm doing that to indicate that this angle, the measurement of that opening, okay, between those two lines where they intersect, that is a 90-degree angle. And so to indicate that, we'll just draw this little box in it, okay? And that just shows, because if you're thinking about a square, and we'll talk about squares in a little bit, all of the corners of a square are 90 degrees. And you can look at your notebook paper. The corner of a piece of notebook paper is a 90-degree angle. So perpendicular lines are going to be these lines here that are intersecting, and they intersect at a 90-degree angle. Now you'll notice too, it also forms a 90-degree angle here and here and here. So that's perpendicular lines. Now we just talked about right angles. Those are going to be 90-degree angles. Okay, and we saw that there were 4 of them here in these perpendicular lines that are intersecting. So, and then a straight angle is if you take 2 of those 90-degree angles. I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to draw here. If we took this 90-degree angle and we put it up next to this 90-degree angle, then you would have 90 degrees here and 90 degrees here, which if you started from this line and went around, there's 90, and then there's 90 more. Okay, so that would be 180 degrees from here all the way around to here. So a straight angle, it forms a line, and it's 180 degrees. An acute angle. Now, we've talked about a 90-degree angle a couple times here. Let's talk about an acute angle. An acute angle, and they show this in your book. We're going to draw 2 intersecting lines. Okay, an acute angle is going to be less than 90 degrees. Now let's think about this for a minute. If you look at this angle right here, you can see it's bigger than the corner of your piece of paper, the corner of a square. It's bigger than that. So an acute angle is going to be less than 90 degrees. So it's going to be this angle here. Okay, that is an acute angle. And straight across from it, here, is also an acute angle. Now we don't know the measurement, but we could measure it with a protractor, and it would be less than 90 degrees. We can see that visually. An obtuse angle, we'll change colors here. An obtuse angle is going to be an angle that's bigger than 90 degrees. This is an obtuse angle. And an obtuse angle there. And a way that you can remember that is the acute angle is little. You know, you look at a little puppy or a little kitten and you say, oh, it's so cute. It's so little. It's cute. So the little angle, little smaller than a 90-degree angle, is acute. And then the bigger one is obtuse. Okay, so obtuse would be greater than 90 degrees. And then we talk about degrees. I've mentioned that, but that is a term that you need to know. That's how we measure these. Is it the unit that we use to measure these? And a circle is broken down into 360 degrees. Okay, so if I draw a circle, okay, and here's my center, and here's my starting point. If I measured all the way to here, I'd be 90. 90 more is 180. 90 more is 270. 90 more is 360. Okay, so there's 360 degrees in a circle. And we've talked several times already in this video about 90 degrees. So we know what a 90-degree angle is. That's a right angle. We talked about if you put two of those together that you'll get 180 degrees. And that's called a straight angle. And then 360 degrees, if you go all the way around, you get a circle. So 360 degrees is all the way around and you get a circle. And we'll stop right there and pick up for 2B on the next video.